So hopefully you've now gotten a chance to look at all the channels for each of your participants and removed and interpolated any excessively noisy channels. Now we're going to go on to our next two pre-processing steps. First one is referencing, and the second one is epoching or segmenting our data into conditions. So we're going to go back to BVA. As you can see here, I've applied edit channels and pooling to each of my participants, and now I'm ready to reference. So whenever we measure voltage, it's a potential, so it's necessarily measured in reference to something. Now, when we record EEG, we typically use a reference channel, but now we're trying to use a new reference, and that is going to be made up of an average of all of the different channels. So we're going to choose our most recent pre-processing step. We're going to go to transformations and new reference right here. Now, like I said, we're going to choose all of our channels to form the new reference. Now there's a notable exception here. We're going to remove our eye channels. So when we record, as you can see here, there's channels that we use just to measure activity at the eyes that we can call on later. And that is 128, 127, 126, and 125. For yours, it might be something different. They might be labeled like HEOG or BEOG. But for my data, it is these four right here. So we're going to remove those from forming the new reference. Now, when we apply the new reference, we're going to select every single channel, including the eye channels. These will all get referenced to the average. Now we get to name it. I'm just going to name it average because that's what it is, and finish. Great, so we can see new reference popped up here. So again, since this is one of those steps that I want to apply to everyone, I'm going to go to my history file. Process steps. And I'm going to apply new reference. Now, you could wait to apply this. I'm going to do it right now just because. So I'm going to apply to history file. And last time I applied it to the root, which is raw data here. But now, since I want to apply it to the most recent processing step for all the participants, I'm going to choose a different part of a different branch or a different history node, as they call it. And that is pooling. As you can see right here, pooling is the most recent. That's what I want to apply it to. And I want to apply it to all of my participants except for the one I already did it for, which is 14. Great. So it'll go through and do that for me for each person. Awesome. Now, one of the common errors you'll run into with referencing, especially if you've already had a file in BVA before, is that when I just went in and referenced, I changed some of the settings. And now if I want to go apply a new reference to a different data set, it's going to pop up with an error that says vector T too long, and it won't even let you reference. So it's an easy fix. You go to help, installed components, down to new reference. Did I pass already? New reference, and I'm going to reset it to defaults. So I click OK, OK, if this was an issue, and then I'd be able to reference no matter what. It wouldn't pop up with that issue anymore. So next, now that I'm referenced, I want to go in and segment my data into the relevant conditions for my experiment. Now, this is going to change for everybody. For me, this was a continuous performance task, and I'm going to be looking at two conditions. There's a go condition and a no-go condition. So these markers down here, these were patterns of letters that would pop up. And when a certain pattern came up and participants were supposed to make a response, then that was our go condition. And then when a different pattern came up and they were supposed to withhold a response, that's our no-go condition. So I'm going to go new reference, the most recent channel, sorry, node, transformations, result evaluation, and segmentation here. Now, like I said, I'm going to create these segments based on the markers that are down here. So those patterns of letters. And I'm just going to not store the data calculated on demand. That's fine. Now here, this is going to vary for everybody, but you're going to choose the markers that are relevant to your condition. For me, I know the pattern involves SPO5. No, sorry, SBO5 and STO5. Maybe it was SP. Actually, I have it written here. So for the go condition, it's STO2 and SBO2. So these are the two that I'm looking at. STO2 and SBO2. Perfect. And now, so these are the markers that I'm telling BVA to look for down here. And I also want to know when they made a response. For our go condition, I only want to treat this as a trial if they happen to click yes afterwards if they made that response. So I'm going to type a function in down here under advanced Boolean expression called response, RESP, and then in brackets, I'm going to put the time that I'm looking for a response within. So I'm going to go 800 milliseconds after either of these markers for a response made by the participant, and that is going to be part of my new trial. Now, if you're not interested in whether or not they made a response, if you just have these markers, then you can leave this blank. That's fine. But for me, this is going to be my go condition. This is perfect. So you're going to choose probably a period before as a bit of a baseline. So I'm going to have minus 200 milliseconds, and I'm going to end up at, that's good, 1,000 milliseconds. So now my trials, my segments are going to be 1,200 milliseconds long. Awesome. So here, now we can see instead of channels, we see individual segments of each channel. So 1, 2, 3, 4, these are all my channels. I can zoom in the same way. And you can see down here that there is 48 segments that it made. So this is only showing me one segment. If I wanted to move through them, I could use these buttons down here. 2, 3, 4. And again, I can look at different channels, show more or less channels. And this is all of my different segments for each channel. So each of these channels has 48 segments. Awesome. Now, one of the first things I'm going to do as soon as I segment is rename this into the condition that I want it to be. So for this, I'm going to call it go correct, as in this was a go condition and they responded correctly. And my next is going to be a no-go correct. So once I have this, I'm going to go back to new reference and I'm going to segment again. Yes, same thing, except in this case, instead of using these two markers, I'm now going to use STO5 and SBO5. STO5 is right there, and SBO5 is right here. Perfect. In this case, instead of having a response, I only want conditions where they didn't make a response. This is no-go. So I'm going to go not in capitals, RESP, and then same thing, the 800 milliseconds that I'm looking for. Perfect. Finish. Now again, I can see these trials for the no-go condition, and I'm going to rename this no-go correct. Now I'm going to go back to my history file. Do I have it open here? Back to my history file, and I'm going to apply these new things to new reference. Actually, since I already added new reference, I'm simply going to go no-go and no-go correct. Now, as you'll notice here, I applied them both to the root. I didn't apply no-go correct to go correct because then I'm trying to be segmenting my already segmented data. So make sure these are one vertical line there, as in they're different branches, different history nodes. So now I can apply this to the rest of them. 15, 16, 17, 19. Now this should segment all of our other participants for us. So now for each of our participants, we have two conditions of interest, and we can see all the segments for them here. The no-go condition had 50 segments, the go condition had 48. Awesome. Cool, so next we're going to look at some of the steps in the next video that we can then apply to this segmented data.